Great, thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to take 10 minutes this morning to talk very quickly about why Whitman teaches the movement. But before I do that, I'm going to call out some emotions: anger, frustration, confusion, anxiety, humility, confidence, yearning. Now I wonder, do these feelings characterize the young people on our campuses in 2016 as they look around and see the news about police shootings of unarmed young men of color and immigrant hatred and flower shops that won't sell wedding bouquets to gay couples and Islamophobia? Or do those feelings describe young people on college campuses in 1960 when they looked around and saw that only certain men and women were allowed to buy a hamburger and a Coke at Woolworths or vote in a local election, while young brown bodies were targets of water cannons and police batons and bullets? Our students today do not believe that our society is where it should be. We know that because they ask us questions like, why is there so much ignorance, hatred, and violence in what's supposed to be a diverse and inclusive America? Why don't people know how to talk with each other? Why is there so much apathy? Moreover, our students don't believe that our institutions of higher education are where they should be. We know that because they ask us questions like, why are our campuses places of exclusion and indifference? Why are there not more faculty and staff who are as diverse as we are? Why don't more students talk about these concerns? And then they tell us, I don't know how to talk about these concerns. At Whitman College, where I work, all of this exists. Our students share with us their feelings of pain and sadness and bafflement about their world and about their college. They see the aggression, they live in it, and sometimes they're worn down by it. Now, just a few blocks away from our campus in Walla Walla's public school system, in those elementary classes where children are beginning to learn about the world and maybe where they're beginning to gain some of the basic tools of citizenship, is it any different? We're a district of about 6,000 students, nearly 40% of whom are Latino, and at the K-5 level, that percentage is much, much higher. How are all of those young people in their diverse classrooms learning about and practicing to live in a diverse society? So picture it, a small liberal arts college filled with students who are passionate and puzzled about their world, sitting right in the middle of a community where young kids may or may not be learning how to respond to and shape the society that they live in. That's our moment. Now, let's talk about history. One morning in the fall of 2011, I was flipping through the New York Times and I saw that the Southern Poverty Law Center had just published a compelling and worrisome report detailing the lack of literacy about America's civil rights history among public school students across the country. The story described how this low level of knowledge was not accidental, but rather the terrible result of state leaders choosing not to include any requirements to teach important components of our national struggle for racial equality. The report graded states on an A to F scale and gave nearly all the states Ds or Fs. Washington was one of the 16 that did not require any study of the civil rights movement at elementary or middle school levels, and we received in Washington an F overall. The report was a gut punch and a moment of insight for me. I suddenly realized that the large majority of our students at Whitman came from states where their school systems did not require them to learn about the formative moments in our nation's story. Or, to put it more bluntly, those students on our campus were never invited to have a real conversation about race in America. I also realized that Walla Walla's public schools, including the oldest continuously operating elementary school in our state, just 3 doors down from my house and where my 2 young mixed-race children would one day go, was not teaching their students about one of the most important political moments in the 20th century. Washington got an F, but I knew that in Walla Walla we could do better. We needed to do better. I quickly reached out to the report's author, Dr. Kate Schuster, who's here today, to inquire whether she might be interested in speaking on our campus about her research. We were on the phone a day later. I decided to work with Kate to imagine a new civic engagement initiative that would remedy some of the deficiencies that her report identified. I then contacted our district's assistant superintendent, with whom we already had a fantastic relationship due to the many successful school-based service learning programs that Whitman was coordinating. So over the next couple of weeks, Whitman, the SPLC, and the Walla Walla District created a model to train our students in various lessons about the civil rights movement. Our students would then work with kids in the local schools to get them talking about what does it mean to live in the ever more diversifying 21st century. Our assistant superintendent was particularly excited about this possibility because she regarded these structured discussions about difference, approached through the lessons about civil rights history, as really helping the district achieve its goal of guiding students about how to interact in their multiracial and multilingual classrooms. We decided to name this collaboration Whitman Teaches the Movement. In less than 6 weeks, we recruited 100 of our students, as well as several dozen teachers in the 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 11th grade classes. And then the next month, we brought Kate to Walla Walla to lead the trainings. Then, during the first 2 weeks of the next semester, during what of course turned out to be some of the worst weather of the last decade, we launched 50 Whitman student teams into Walla Walla to teach the movement. Since those first snowy days in early 2012, we've provided hundreds of our students with powerful, memorable, and in many instances quite transformative experiences sharing some of the most dramatic and inspiring moments in America's story with thousands of young people in Walla Walla. This year, during the 2 weeks of the project, we were able to reach more than 20% of our entire public school student population, over 1,000 young people from 1st to 11th grades. But of course, it's not just history we're teaching and talking about. We choose to emphasize the present-day importance of the civil rights movement, and in doing so, we open up opportunities on our own campus for dialogue. Our 2 student interns who oversee our program not only coordinate lessons and discussions off campus, they also coordinate discussions on campus about current issues they see in the news, like Black Lives Matter and border walls and our very own college mascot, the missionaries. They invite their friends and classmates and residence hall sections and teammates and everyone who wants to try to talk about the challenging and personal topics that the movement's built on, conversations that we know are so difficult but also so necessary. 3 blocks away, over in the district's headquarters, the teachers tell us that their students continue to discuss the ideas from their sessions, and that from time to time they refer back to ideas of civil rights or equality or collective action that our lessons explore. Should we take pride in this? Maybe we should. We know for a fact that these conversations, while admittedly few in number, may be the only intentional, guided, and reflective exposure to race that these kids will ever get. Back at Whitman, our students tell us that by teaching kids about powerful moments of national self-transformation and responding to the kids' questions about why is it that they hear insidious racist comments in their class or in their neighborhood or in the news, everything that they've learned in their Whitman seminars about justice and rights and identity and equality, it's suddenly all alive, it's real, it's right in front of them. And they've got to deal with it, they've got to engage because of all those cute and very curious second graders sitting right in front of them. And then they understand that exchange is what can lead to the change. Together, our 2 interacting educational institutions help our young people gain experience and empathy and the confidence to work toward creating inclusive and just communities on and off of their campuses. And so what does it mean when we help our local first graders realize that Ruby Bridges was their same age when she bravely walked into the all-white France elementary school in Louisiana? Or what does it mean when we help our local 9th and 10th graders realize that they're the same age as the young people who, in 1963, walked out of the front doors of the 16th Street Baptist Church into fire hoses and police dogs? Nearly everyone is surprised when they find out that so many of the key figures in the movement, as well as so many who fought discrimination outside of the public spotlight, were in their teens and 20s when they were reshaping history. Perhaps because of this age proximity, our students' experiences talking about and teaching about racial discrimination and courageous grassroots activists resonates long after they complete their volunteer commitments. In fact, they tend to go deeper into the debates and into the protests. They learn, and then they debate, and then they apply, and then they want to learn more. So why does Whitman teach the movement? We do so because, as Benjamin Hedin points out in his terrific recent book, In Search of the Movement, The Struggle for Civil Rights Then and Now, remember, you're continuing something, not starting it. And so here's one outcome of that continuing. This winter, I had the opportunity to visit one of the second grade classes to observe our students teaching the lesson on the Greensboro lunch counter sit-ins. Yet, it wasn't just any class, it was my son's class. Now, at our house, around our dinner table, we talk about race quite a bit. And he's shared stories over the last 2 years about some worrisome comments that he's heard at school, usually directed toward his darker-skinned friends and classmates, but sometimes toward him. And so I was really curious what was going to happen that day. I sat in a tiny chair in the back of the room watching the Whitman volunteers talk with all those 7-year-olds about discrimination and segregation and resistance, teaching my son and his classmates about how a long time ago, some young college students in North Carolina decided they needed to take action to reorganize their society, to create new human relations and structural forms to open access and offer opportunity. And so when we got to the part of the lesson where the kids were invited to develop a campaign responding to something that they saw as wrong in their community, those second graders really rose to the occasion. They painted signs reading, "Homes for everyone," and "Clean parks to play in," and "Help for all the old people who live on my block," and "We can all fix this." As they stood up and marched around the room chanting, I felt the hearts of all the young people in that space opening together as they spoke about a different world that at that moment they could envision. And I knew that if they could continue to see it, they could bring it into being. Schools, colleges, parents, students, teachers, we're all connected. As I sat and watched, I felt all those communities interacting, learning from and inspiring each other, imagining and doing. I felt the future, and it felt brilliant.